Welcome to another edition of the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I am your host today, Jay Christie, filling in for Anthony Canton III, who is away with, he'll be away for a couple episodes, dealing with a family issue, but we wish him well, and I'll be steering the ship in the meantime, being sure to bring on good guests, friends of the show, to fill in AC's stead, and so for today's episode, where we're talking about the last three episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which just dropped, that'll be episodes 6 through 8. We brought on friend of the show, who's on for our first Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man episode, Cecelia Alfonso-Stokes. Cecelia, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Anything to talk about. My favorite guy. We love Spidey.
Absolutely. We love Spidey. And we also love when you guys sign up for the Patreon. That's patreon.com/MCUniversityPod. We'll be doing, I'm not sure what the schedule is going to be. I'm going to be doing 2 episodes this month with guests. We're going to do, when AC's back, we're going to do John Wick 3 and the mailbag, but I'll be filling in some gaps. Anyone who's listened to the show when AC's been gone previously knows that I take advantage of being able to program it myself. So there might be some bullshit. And I mean that in a good way. Anyway, but let's talk about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Now, like I said, you were on the first episode, we talked about it. How did you like the last 3? You don't need to go beat by beat or anything like that, but how do you feel it was progressing before we got to this week's episodes?
I have really enjoyed the getting to zoom in on characters. I know that's something you said last week, but what is really interesting to me about the kind of releasing a couple of episodes week over week is that each episode has a regular TV structure, but then I can tell there actually was some thought put into which episodes were going to be released together. So there was kind of like a little arc in the last 3 episodes, and then this week's episodes you get a little bit of an arc too, and they're kind of centering around different types of like character relationships and dynamics. So like the last one, I think it was very Lonnie, like watching Lonnie kind of change. And then this one, we saw like Nico and Harry's relationship sort of develop a little more. And I think I find it really pleasing. I don't know. It's a kind of a different way of doing it.
Yeah, it's an interesting model, and I wonder if other shows outside of this one will use it, because I think it is more effective than, like, I think the best way to do it always is going to be one a week. I think that's just the best way to release television. But I think that if you have a situation like this, where they're clearly trying to get through it in a compressed amount of time because they need to get to Daredevil, that I think that this is a much better way to do it than to do the Echo release all at once. Because, like, 3 30-minute episodes is manageable to watch in a night. And, like, but it also doesn't feel like, so it doesn't feel like you have to plan it, because I think that's so much what happens when people release a season all at once. If you don't make a plan of, like, we're going to watch it all this weekend, or we're going to watch one a night, you can easily forget about it. And I think that this is a really good way of keeping people engaged.
Yeah, and you can still get, like, there's still cliffhangers. So we were watching the last episode that aired today, and the last shot, is like looking at Peter's kind of reflection of the mask back at him, and then it cuts, and me and both of my kids were like, ah! And I have not heard like that intense of a response from them watching one episode. So there is kind of something about like it builds up a little more when you have a few. So yeah, it was fun.
Exactly. And so, I'm going to kind of go through roughly, mostly because, you watch all the episodes. Everyone's watched all of them at the same time, so I don't think it's that important to keep them completely separate, because we all just watch it together. But there are a couple elements that I want to talk about. I think, as you mentioned, one of the more interesting elements is in relationship dynamics between Peter, Nico, and Harry. Specifically,
Peter's trying to make fetch happen.
Exactly. It's the classic thing of trying to introduce 2 friend groups together, and it maybe not working. And Peter's like oblivious. He doesn't see the obvious thing of like, oh right, Nico resents Harry.
I think he sees that, but I think like Peter is such an earnest person. Like I think the way that he's like, that's great. I'm glad you're not upset because you're all gonna come to my house this Friday, has this kind of like, I am gonna make fetch happen, and you're all gonna get on board with it. But yeah, he's not a good mediator when people are not doing well.
No, because he's not really that, like, he's not willing to meet Nico halfway with it. He's
Mhm.
kind of just like, but Harry's nice. He's been nice to me,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, but he's like, she sees him in a certain way, and yada
Yeah.
yada. Um, and so yeah, we get the bit where they're at the apartment watching Predator, playing Candyland, Monopoly, and another game I didn't really catch what it was,
Yeah.
and we get the classic Spider-Man scenario where Spider-Man needs to, run out of the apartment because there's a thing going on. And,
Mhm.
I felt like this was a really I really like the choice of having Harry and Nico have to spend time with each other because like it does because we've seen their relationship mediated through Peter and just like
Mhm.
seeing that like there is I like that they didn't immediately become friends. I like that there was still tension the whole time.
Yes. Yeah, and I liked too what we did really get to see right away is that Harry is, like, similar to Peter in that he's also very earnest,
Mhm.
which is very true of the Harry character. Like, he
Mhm.
also kind of believes best of people and wants to get along with people and, like, genuinely wants to be
Mhm.
friendly, and I'm glad that that was displayed quickly
Yeah.
and that the next episode we got to see them actually become friends, so it wasn't this whole, like, series
Yeah.
long thing.
Because the thing is, it feels like, and I think it's an interesting thing that Harry, like you said, always has. Where like he he doesn't. It's not that he's just resents the way that people treat him for he's rich. It's that he's genuinely hurt by it. Like, and like
Yeah.
that's what makes him such a tragic character. Is you would think by
Yeah.
this age he would be numb to it, but like he still is. It still genuinely hurts him that Nico hates him for being rich. Like that, it actually
Yeah.
makes it feel bad. um,
Yes.
and so I think that makes it a really interesting situation. But and I'm gonna go back to some other stuff early in the episode, but I think the centerpiece of this episode, obviously, is the fight with Daredevil. Um,
Yeah. It's
how
so
did you like
dope.
seeing our friend Matt Murdock in this series?
Oh, man. I mean, I was really excited. I was disappointed that he didn't show up in the other 2 episodes at all, and I really thought he would, but whatever. Maybe we could touch on that a little bit later. But it was really fun to see because he was able to point to this thing with Peter
Hmm.
where what's interesting to me about Peter is that he's like at once has very good intuition. He has
Hmm.
spidey sense,
Hmm.
but he's also just incredibly naive.
Yeah.
And so he was able to pick up right away like this guy's not a bad guy,
No.
but there's something that I can't quite figure like, he has to choose to see what Norman is doing.
Hmm.
So, I think that introducing that kind of wrench in Peter's understanding or
Hmm.
relationship with Norman through Daredevil and through a
Hmm.
pretty sick fight with Daredevil too
Yeah.
was really smart because he
Hmm.
is kind of a morally like, he's got a good, I don't know, moral compass, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
'cause and I think that I like that they peppered it in that it didn't immediately go to like a full heel turn from Norman. That it's kind of just a thing that's set up because we obviously know we're not babes in the woods. We know that Norman Osborn is eventually a bad guy. We know that there is
Mhm.
something more going on.
Mhm.
But I like that it's implanted in Peter's head. But I think the thing about Peter is he's like naive specifically because he's like very unsure of his like abilities to like
Mhm.
he thinks of himself as a kid a lot. Like that's the whole thing. Like
Yes,
he
yeah.
simultaneously is always like, I can do whatever, but he very much thinks of himself as a kid who doesn't understand the world. So he'll always defer to older, not always, but in this
Oh,
series, he
yeah.
defers to Norman in ways that he shouldn't. Like he should be more steadfast about it.
Yeah, well, and, like, he kind of that is a thing about his character that we do see in tons of other properties, like,
Mhm.
he got, duped by Mysterio,
Mhm.
and he does tend to, like, put a lot of faith in the video games,
Mhm.
and in other places, Doc Ock. So he does look for mentorship, and he wants it so badly
Mhm.
because,
Yeah.
so many people in his life died. So
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that would do it.
yeah. So, I mean, poor little baby is just having a trauma response, but
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
makes
and
sense
I
in the
really
case.
like the way that they did the Daredevil fight. I mean, I think that, like, generally speaking, in most scenes, the animation in the show leaves a lot to be desired. It's pretty basic. But I think that
Yeah.
the ways that they, like, use stylization on the fights are effective. Um, and I think that, like, really emphasizing Daredevil's, batons. Not the, are they batons? What are they called technically? There's a word for them
I
I'm
don't know.
forgetting. AC's not here. I
Sticks.
apologize. Uh,
Sticks.
that like obviously he uses those in the TV series, but I feel like
Mhm.
they're much more central in this, and I really like that. Yeah, and also I do always appreciate when someone points out that he's dressed like the devil. I feel like bad guys
Yeah.
don't do that enough.
I agree. I agree. And especially coming from Peter, who, like, if
Mhm,
anybody should point it out, it should be perhaps one of the most
mhm.
pure-hearted characters, I think, to, like, ever grace our screens.
Yeah, and
So,
Matt Murdock's always like, I mean, I'm trying to help you, and it's like you're dressed as the devil. Like
yeah.
I need you to understand that you are
Your
dressed as
eyes
Satan.
are red. Like,
Yeah.
that's just universally known to be
Mhm.
evil.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was funny.
And this is all going on, when Norman is at a charity banquet talking to Thaddeus Ross, about technologies and this that, and the other. We learned that he basically made up a fake identity for who Spider-Man is, and he's going to get him in line with the Sokovia Accords, which
Mhm.
I hope that comes back up because that feels like they might have just
Yeah.
dropped it. But I hope it's not a real guy he's using because I hope like this some random dude doesn't get like arrested for being Spider-Man. Um,
John
but
Gallo.
Exactly. But I really do like the ambiguity with, like, that we don't get there's not, like, a lingering shot of what got stolen, like, we just even though it's a show for kids, I do appreciate that they are trusting the audience enough to hold this
Mhm.
in mind, you know what I mean? And, like, that's obviously, like, faint praise because yeah, of course, the audience should be able to hold something like that in mind, but, like, in kids shows and honestly TV these days, frankly, like,
Mhm.
they don't give us they give us enough just to, like, pique our interest to know there's something more going on, but we don't need to know anything, we just need to know that something's going on.
Yes, yeah, and actually speaking of that, I didn't really clock at the first because I watched episode 6 twice.
Mm.
When Jean
Mhm.
Jeannie
Yeah.
walks in and
Mhm.
then he's like, "You gotta go by," and then that isn't picked back up for the next few episodes. So I am like, I'd f we s when I watched the episode the second
Mm.
time, I was like, "What is going on there?" So they do there are kind of these little things that are peppered in that,
Yeah.
like you're saying, can
Yeah,
hint
I
of
do wonder. I'm not sure what that's
truth.
supposed to mean. I
Mhm.
assume that Genie's in on something, but
Yeah.
we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I really thought this was an interesting episode. I thought that the in the end, of course, is where Harry being a fucking idiot, not picking up on signs.
Buddy. Yeah. Well, first he said he liked tarot,
Yeah.
as an accessory, and I was
Mhm.
like, my brother in Christ, you gotta back up. You can't do that. Um, and then yeah, that
He basically
was
was telegraphing. She might as well have been saying like,
yes,
"I am lying to you. I don't know his secret." And he's like, "Oh, you
yes,
know his secret?" Like,
yeah. How
if
he's
the
Spider
secret
Man.
if the secret you're holding is that your friend is a superhero who has a secret identity, you need the other person to say it first.
I know, and but yeah, I was
Not, I'm
thinking
criticizing the character, not the writing, because I think it makes sense for the
no,
character to do this.
it makes sense for the character to do it. I am wondering, perhaps you could help me remember how many like characters, super characters in this world or show that we know of so far have secret identities.
Very few. That's one of the big criticisms of the MCU is that
Yeah.
most don't. So I don't know if there's any in this universe other than Daredevil, obviously. Um,
Yes.
and that might be it because we've seen Doctor Strange, who obviously uses his actual last name, uh, Iron Man, who's famously Tony Stark,
Who
and
famously Tony Stark saying I am Iron Man.
yeah, is the thing that
So,
launched the MCU. So like uh, yeah,
yeah.
I don't think that there are any.
I think that also I don't know. So then I don't know how to take seriously a secret identity or how
Mm,
characters in the show like should take it seriously. So especially a 15-year-old who's
yeah.
like, "Did you hear? Yeah,
Mm,
did you hear?" Um, so yeah, that is one thing that is kind of that makes Peter Spider-Man stand out in a
yeah.
way that I can't quite
Mhm.
place.
And I think the thing that we kind of take for granted because we've known these characters for so long, and especially because all of us, for the most part, have interacted with these characters since we were children. So, like, when I started consuming Spider Man content, Spider Man was older than me. And so it's like very easy for me to forget, like, right, no, this is a child who is fighting crime. and so, like, and like, the thing that I think is important to keep in mind is like, and this is a thing that they get at a little bit in the end of Spider Man Far From Home, is like,
Mhm.
if there was a mass vigilante that was fighting crime with like a group of superheroes, right? or like who was like capable of fighting like super high powered criminals, people with abilities and stuff, and you'd be like, okay, who could this possibly be? You would never go under the, you would not be like, this is a high schooler. Like it would
Right.
never occur to you there was a 15-year-old. And so like the
Yeah.
idea of Nico treating like Peter being Spider-Man is like if someone said that your friend was the Tooth Fairy. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's 15.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah. It was poor Harry. And I also thought the other part of that episode that stuck out
Mhm,
was the whole gala
mhm,
scene,
mhm,
because there was something about Norman and his sinisterness. It's been there
mhm,
from the beginning,
mhm,
but I was noticing that in like most of the shots he was in, he was very alone or like
mhm,
with
yeah.
one other person. So,
Mhm,
and in a lot of the scenes that he's in with Peter, it's just like the two of them in this big, huge, empty
mhm,
room, or him and Harry and Peter in this big,
mhm,
huge, empty room, which is, I felt like it was really interesting to see that in this gala situation where a bunch of
yeah.
people are supposed to be there and he
Mhm.
sticks out like a sore thumb.
I think he's very obviously a very lonely person. I think it's notable
Hmm.
that we see that photo of him with Doc Ock and all the other researchers. Yet he doesn't
Hmm.
interact with any. We'd never see him do that anymore. Like at some point he was interacting with you, but he doesn't anymore. And that
Hmm.
all might just say subtext. That might be a thing that they say at some point. But I do. That is a good point. That like he's not like the conversation we see him have is a business conversation. He's not hobnobbing with people. He's not having a good time. He's he's there transactionally, and not. I don't think it's because he's cold and calculated. I think it's because he's not as capable as he might have once been at having relationships like that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It was really interesting. I'm super fascinated with what they're doing
mhm.
with Norman. He's awesome.
Yes. And so we let's go to the next episode where I mean, oh, through all these episodes, I don't remember what and where one ends and one begins in this regard, but we have Lonnie falling deeper and deeper into the gang. He's chased, I think, in the first one, and
Lonnie.
he gets kicked
Hmm.
off the football team. He's not showing up to school. Um,
Hmm.
just a real tough beat for a guy, Lonnie. Um,
He's just an oldest kid who has too much
hmm
responsibility. And I mean, like, as another oldest child,
hmm
I get it. I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
it so
Mhm.
deeply.
Yeah, you
So
famously, if people don't know this, you joined a gang when you were 17 to protect your younger sibling. Um,
100%. Yeah.
exactly.
I'm still caught up in it.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that you're able to like live a normal life now, you can't even say what you had to do to get out. Um, but
They call me Obelisk now. Like Obelisk used to. Sorry, that was a bad one.
no, it's fine. But that's a good one. So yeah, he's falling deeper and deeper, and you know, he's the thing about it is, which I like, is that like he is not like he's not powerless in this. He is leaning into it in ways like he's enjoying it.
Hmm.
You know, like I think that that's kind of when stories try to like have a sympathetic villain, I think what a lot of times they miss out on is like if you actually are a sympathetic person to your core, like you can get in bad situations, but you're not going to become a villain, quote unquote. Like if he never got caught up in this, he probably never would have done anything villainous in his life. But he does have it in him to enjoy this too much. Is the thing.
Yeah, and I think you said something really interesting last week where um one of the benefits of
Mm,
television especially
mm,
is that you can kind of track what
mhm,
like somebody sort of
mhm,
turn from good to evil or evil to good
mm,
in a way that makes sense. And so you're like it's all these kind of small micro decisions, and
mhm.
then eventually one small decision will activate in that person
Yeah,
or reveal
yeah,
like, oh, I actually do kind of want to beat the shit out of someone. I think I
yeah.
have some unresolved
Yeah.
anger.
It's why I think that, like, and I'm not saying that Lonnie at this point is anywhere near as bad as this guy. It's why I think one of the most important lines in the history of television, because it people who refuse to see it this way, it put him in their place, is in the finale of Breaking Bad when
Mm.
Skyler is like, and don't tell me you did it for us, yada yada. And he's like, no, I did it because I enjoyed it. Like, that I think is
Yeah.
important because obviously, I'll be honest with you, if you have a head on your shoulders, you could have figured that out by end of season one. But I think that, like, yeah, like at some point, Lonnie will cross. I would say by the end of these 3 episodes, Lonnie has crossed over into doing this for his brother and doing it because he enjoys it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is also, it's so sad because
Yeah.
when you first, if you think just a few episodes ago, he was like
Mhm.
doing great and he was
He's
like,
getting a
hey, Peter,
scholarship.
you can be my buddy. And like,
Mhm.
yeah. And mom, I'm going to fix up your car.
He
And
could have been
I
the
really
next
wasn't,
Jalen Hurts.
yeah. Shouts, go birds.
Yeah.
But I think and in those first episodes where we saw him, I was like, there's no way that they're
Yeah.
going to successfully turn him to Tombstone
Mhm.
this season. It's
Mhm.
got to be a
Mhm.
while. And they did
I
convincingly.
think a big thing about it is that, like, while they are initially hostile to him, I think it's really important that Donovan and the rest of the gang are, like, good, nice to him generally. Like I not obviously they're still kind of little
Mhm.
but like the whole bit where he's on the phone with his mom and Donovan is like, hey, we're not gonna make fun of someone for loving their mom or whatever. Like I think that like the fact that he actually does have belonging at some point is I think really important because while we don't have enough of his backstory to know what his history is with friend groups and things like that, I think that like there is something intoxicating about being appreciated and being wanted. Yeah, I mean,
Well, and what they
spoiler
do,
alert: gangs are effective at recruiting people.
they are effective. Well, and also like there's the material conditions that he's
Yeah.
living in. Like if they can be, he can go, yeah, they're kind of bad, but when I was scared, I showed up at this place and there was
Mhm.
like a building that had
Mhm.
locking doors and
Mhm.
couches and some food, and they said I could stay here. If you can
Mm.
um, make those base needs feel less precarious for
Mhm.
somebody, then yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to kind of rebuild a
Yeah.
persona on top of it.
Exactly. So when we get into the next episode, and I apologize, I'm going to be going out of order with things that happen because a couple things. One, because they blend together, and two, because these damn people are not putting out the synopses quickly enough. Normally, I rely on a synopsis on IMDb or Wikipedia, and they're just not there. They just don't have them
Okay,
up.
I wrote brief
Okay.
bullet
Well,
point
no, but I don't
synopses.
know if this comes first, but the first thing I wanted to talk about was the whole idea that they're trying to track that Norman figures out that it's Otto Octavius who is behind the weapons, and they want to track it.
Yeah, that's at the end. So the end of episode 7, because
Yeah.
this one is titled Scorpion
Yeah.
Rising, and so that's
Yeah.
like because at the
Mhm.
back of the first one you see
Yeah.
Scorpion's outfit
Mhm.
for the first time.
Yeah.
This is the one where it ends with Peter getting the absolute
Yeah,
shit
that's what I
beaten
said.
out
Yeah,
of
because so
him.
before that is when they go through look at the gamma radiation, and they
Yes,
look at
they look at
different
the gamma
elements.
radiation.
There's the great
Yes.
line where Peter says it might be solar power, and Norman says he can't control the sun.
He said, "I doubt he's managed." I literally wrote it down.
Yeah,
I doubt he's managed to harness the power of the sun. And I was like, we love a reference.
yeah,
And especially, I mean, it's so great to hear like AC and Hunter, who are like
mm,
comic heads, get
yeah,
really, really excited about
yeah,
things. But I like that they also have it for
yep.
those of us
For
who are
us,
like, I have just seen the
yeah,
movies.
yep,
I have seen the
exactly,
movies.
exactly.
That's pretty much it.
And yeah, so we get him. He's a disgraced scientist or whatever. But of course, this is just Norman's point of view, so we actually have no idea how true this is. And he's working with gamma radiation. And the thing about gamma radiation is they keep trying it in the MCU, and I don't think it's ever really worked. I think that like they just keep going back to the well of gamma radiation. Like this time, we're gonna fucking figure it out,
I,
and it just has never worked out well. They see the thing of like if it overheats, it can like hurt the person, and no shit, it's radiation. It's unstable.
yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It kind of is like Quantum was for a while, where it's
yeah,
like we're just adding it to things and
yeah.
to
I don't actually know what
make
the
it
properties of
volatile.
gamma. I don't know what the properties of gamma radiation are, but I'm positive that like I know when they did the Incredible Hulk, they had to make it so that like it wasn't just gamma radiation; it was gamma radiation and like a compound. Because like in the '60s, you could say that just gamma radiation can turn you into a Hulk, but by the 2000s, it's like that's just not how science works. You know that.
I don't. I truly don't. So, I
Fair,
mean,
fair.
I was raised with sorry, mom. I was raised with Christian Science curriculum, so, there's just a
Hmm.
big gap in my knowledge there.
Mm. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
if actually was realistic game radiation, it'd be the Incredible Hulk. It's like, and what do you have? It's like, yeah, he's got a bunch of organ failure, he's got liver cancer. Like that's really what it'd be. That's what happens if you really got bombarded with gamma
That's why
radiation.
I think that their like explanation for it be in with She-Hulk is being like, yeah, we've got this like
Uh
weird
huh.
gene that lets us
Hmm.
do this. I'm like, that I can
Sure.
accept and we'll
Yeah.
just move
Yeah.
on.
Exactly. And so they're looking for gamma radiation all over the city, and they end up finding like a big hotspot of it. And this is intertwined with Nico and Harry. Nico wants to
Hmm.
apologize Harry wants to apologize to Nico. Goes out to her place in Queens, and this is where I need to get a soapbox. The geography in this bit is so fucking ridiculous. She clearly lives in outer Queens, right? She lives in a single family home, clearly, right? Okay. And so they're in Queens somewhere, at least far enough out where she's living in a single family home. Now, I live in Astoria, not to dox myself, but and there are some areas where you can get houses this far away. So, like, let's grant that she lives like in Astoria-ish, which is pretty close to Manhattan. Still, I don't know if you've ever been in a car in New York City. It's not fucking getting anywhere. And this show takes
No.
place in like 2015. This is before congestion pricing, so it's fucking clogged up. And so we see them eating a pizza in a parking garage in like Midtown. They were in Queens and they drove into Midtown to get pizza. And then when they leave and he's teaching her how to drive, they're in a neighborhood that has an elevated subway, which could be Astoria, it could be like Brighton Beach, it could be like Forest Hill. Like, why are you? It just makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm
I
not actually mad because people who get actually mad about this stuff are annoying, but I have to play it up a little bit.
I mean, I'm not from New York,
No.
and even I was like, is there enough like stretch of road for them to have a race in the
Yes, there is. I would say like
Okay.
maybe not in I don't think in Astoria there might be. I don't know like, every Attleboro neighborhood that well. I know that Brighton Beach has really long stretches like that. And I
Okay.
know that when I say
Terrifying.
no, I mean that not because I've been, but because the main area of Grand Theft Auto 4 is based on Brighton Beach. And so that's
Okay, so your knowledge is like
but
like
but Brighton Beach does it's
fresh.
I would say it's the neighborhood that most famously has like streets that run parallel under
Okay.
subways. Um
Okay.
yeah.
I'll take your word for it, but that stood out to me. And then yeah, the like mostly empty parking lot.
yeah.
I'm like, no, those spots are $55 a day
Yeah.
at best. So
But the most
yeah.
important thing that happened in these episodes, obviously, we see a lot of characters come back. We have, Norman Osborn, who hasn't been here yet, Doc Ock. We have Iron Man. We have Matt Murdock. But obviously, the most important character we have come back is Clev, the guy who says, "Tell Spider-Man to do a flip," who also is on the bus in She-Hulk. And the thing that made me so happy is that they got Zach Cherry back to do it. I don't know if you know Zach
And
Cherry.
yeah, he's in
Yeah, Severance.
Severance.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's a guy
Villain
who,
in
I'll be honest with you,
Memory.
I've actually never watched Severance, but I'm a huge fan of his because he's a big New York comedy guy who's like involved in like the fun comedy stuff, and he's just like happened to become a big actor on one of the biggest TV shows.
So
Uh,
funny. He's in Severance and he's in the Pete Holmes show
yeah,
Crashing.
I love that
So
he's canonically the same character that they clarified. Like, yeah, he's the same. I remember
yes.
he was on the George Lucas talk show, which is my favorite like live show, and it's also did like they do streaming stuff sometimes. He's a regular guest, and they once had him on, and they asked him to say Dua Lipa in the cadence of Dua Flip. Anyway, that's the thing to look up. But so he's great, and
Excited.
he does the street race against the woman with flames on her car. And I like this. This is a nice bonding moment. It doesn't go too fast. It doesn't end with like them both trying to grab the clutch and they hold hands. Like it's done tastefully.
Yes, I was a little nervous when they're like sitting on the porch at the
Mhm,
end and they kind of look at each other.
mhm.
I was like, don't do it. Not yet. This needs to be a little more earned. And I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah,
So yeah, that was that was funny.
yeah. I so we get through that. They have, like I said, they have the moment on the steps, where they have a heart to heart. It's a really nice moment. But as this is all going on, Spider-Man, he's seeing Carnage, not Car- he's seeing devastation. Carnage is not there.
Carnage. Carnage,
Uh,
lowercase c.
Yeah, lowercase c Carnage. And he gets to the base of the what is it, the 110th Street gang, and
The 1/10,
110th.
because
Sorry,
I wrote it incorrectly in my notes and I had to go
right,
back
right,
and
right.
fix it.
And who's there but Scorpion, Matt Gargan.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, I really like the way that the tale works. Like I think it's really unlike a lot of comic book characters where if you do it like literally, it literally looks like it's like that doesn't seem functional at all. Like you actually
Mhm.
believe that having this tail is useful for him.
Yeah, well, and it can because it can, I guess, extend and then
Mhm,
retract or
mhm.
something. Because at first I was it's just kind of a tail, but seeing it get really big and huge and long for some reason, yeah, that's, um sorry, I was about to like, "That's what she said" myself, and then I just did anyway, it's all
I mean,
totally fine, but,
if
like,
you want to take the opportunity, you obviously can.
it's right there, so
Yeah, yeah,
there's nothing else, I mean,
yeah.
but I will say, like, I mean, I also again don't
Mm,
know the comics super well. I do know Scorpion from like the video games,
mm,
and because there's this sort of like semi-realistic
mm,
visual thing they're trying to
mm,
do, sometimes the suit just kind of seems clunky, and I'm like, you
yeah,
shouldn't be moving around that quickly and things like
yeah.
that. So I did like seeing it here,
It's
and
very stripped
they
down. It's just a bare
yeah.
bones.
It is the bare bones. It is the beta version, but it also did make me feel like, oh, we actually should take this villain more seriously. And
Yeah.
again, I'm sure there's whole comics history that I just don't
Of
know, but
course.
every other time I'm like, he's Scorpion.
Yeah.
And in the video games, like he's one of the earlier ones that you
Mhm.
beat up
Yeah.
and put in jail.
Mhm.
So having this be like Peter's first
Mhm.
beat down,
Yeah.
um, that was a cool. I
Yeah.
was not expecting that.
Yeah. And the thing I want to back up on, because I forgot to mention it, is that, Peter is teamed up with Pearl in his science class, and then he sees her upset outside, because he's clearly picking up that she's upset, and he initially obviously
Mhm.
swoops in because he likes her, obviously,
Mhm.
but he's not a piece of shit, so he eventually does actually come to comfort her,
Yeah.
and I like that she ends up getting texted by Lonnie's brother, which
Mhm.
is a thing, once again, that is a bad decision, but it's a decision I understand the little brother making, thinking that he's helping.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and then she almost gets killed by Scorpion, so probably a bad move all around.
Classic. Pretty classic, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why I didn't see her showing up being a I don't know. I probably looked away when
Mm,
she was like getting the text message,
mhm,
but yeah, when she showed up at the warehouse, I was like, "Oh my god,
mm,
why is she there? How
yeah,
did she get there?" So,
yeah,
um poor Pearl. I felt so bad
yeah,
for her.
yeah. And so this is where we have the fight. I think the fight looks really cool. I like the bit where they have like the scorpion tail, the stinger coming at the screen a couple times. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I like how Norman on the comms is actually like not that helpful. I think is interesting.
Yeah, he's not that helpful. I mean, that's when it starts to become super, super clear that he is just using Peter for his
Yeah,
own like own gain. And
yeah,
so, but poor Peter doesn't realize that. And so he's
mm,
like, excuse me, hello, please
mm,
help.
mhm.
And is
Yeah,
getting
and he gets distracted because he thinks
annihilated.
he rubbed him up, and then the gamma heats up. And so yeah, Peter gets stabbed through the shoulder. It looks like he gets beaten up, but he ends up getting saved by a glider. Little foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
And as this is
Little
going on,
foreshadowing.
Norman is sort of ignoring him because he's trying to find Doc Ock because clearly that's what he cares about most. And it doesn't happen in the end of this episode or the beginning of the next episode that Doc Ock gets arrested.
It's the next episode.
Okay, yeah,
That scene is wild to
yeah,
me.
that was really cool.
I think it's very cool. I think because it followed this very serious
Right, good call. Yeah,
moment
yeah, good point.
that it was kind of strange to me because that episode it goes like Spider-Man is waking up in the
Mhm,
hospital, he's very hurt. He
mhm,
goes home and he like starts crying and then
yeah,
it cuts to Doc Ock
yeah.
listening to
Yeah.
jazz
The
and
thing is,
has this
you can trick me into thinking a thing is good if you put, like, cartoon levels of violence to, like, upbeat music. You basically trick me, unfortunately, I'm a mark.
I I mean I liked it. It just it was a very abrupt
It
tonal
was.
shift and I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And I don't know. I know that I probably should love this version of Doc Ock. I don't
No,
know.
I mean,
How do you feel about this version of
I
Doc Ock?
I am thinking of him because obviously, because like, my main reference is the Alfred Molina performance, and I'm thinking of it as a
Mhm.
completely different character because I think the Alfred Molina performance is, like, beautiful and heartbreaking. I think it's, like, actually, like, a
Yeah.
really, like I know everyone gives it up for Willem Dafoe in the first Spider-Man, understandably, because he really goes for it, but, like,
Yeah.
Alfred Molina gives like, people talk about, like, a villain you feel bad for, like, he's so high up there because he's, like, legitimately a good guy, and I think that Sam Raimi's decision to make it that, like, no, he is fully a good guy who is driven insane by the technology, it's not his fault. I think that
Yeah.
that is, like, a that's such a Sam Raimi choice too, because Sam Raimi does
Sure.
both simultaneously believe in people being good, but also believes that people are easily corruptible and and can be like,
Yeah.
I really like that that choice. So this guy, like, he just feels very disconnected, where he feels completely self-centered and like very ego-driven. And like, so it's an interesting character to me. And I mean, I'll say it's less interesting, but, like, it's a character that can work, but I'm curious to see what the actual truth of the matter is between him and Norman, because that will color in because there's a
Yeah.
lot of empty gaps with his personality, like, why he's like this,
Yes.
and so I think that
Yeah.
I'm waiting to see what the situation was, because if he was actually crazy and was just trying to suggest wild shit, then that's less interesting. If there was, like, more nuance to it, which I'm suspecting there might be, then I'm more interested.
I mean, if he's been spending all this time with gamma radiation, like maybe that
Yeah.
did slowly start to corrupt him. But
It's gamma radiation is like mercury in this universe.
yes, yeah. I think I just every scene he's in, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. I think it's because they're definitely doing the like comic booky thing
Hmm.
without throughout the whole show, but there's still with every other scene and every other character, there is still some sort of groundedness,
Hmm.
and with him, it just feels like complete caricature.
Yeah.
It throws me off.
It's also it's a weird casting thing, which I always am confused by when you cast a British actor to voice an American character. Because why would you bother? Why wouldn't you just
Mm.
cast an American? Because he's voiced by. Do you know if you know Hugh Dancy, the actor who is on Hannibal?
Oh,
One, he's way too handsome to be playing this character. Like he's a beautiful man, and
yes,
like
he is.
he's playing him like kind of like a caricature like kind of like low class scientist type, and like
Yeah.
I feel like part of the artificiality might be because this is like there's not a real like not that anyone does sound like this normally, but like the fact that it's such a departure, it feels like someone doing a voice, you know. It's a
Yes.
similar thing I have
Yeah.
with the chameleon character, where like that's just a American guy doing a Russian accent, and you can tell it just feels that way, and it doesn't feel like as much a
Right.
real character. I feel like that's a lot of it, and that's why I always am confused by when you cast someone. Obviously, if it's like a funny character, you can cast someone out of their accent, but it's like there are plenty of American voice actors. Why would you ever cast? Yeah,
Yeah. And I think I just wasn't expecting Doc Ock to be like sort of goofy.
yeah.
And like hopefully that'll
You know,
change at some
he's a
point.
goober. He's a big goober of a
He's a
character.
big goober who just like he's just I don't know. He's not even disgraced. He's just
Yeah,
like a brat. He's like this is not good enough for me. I want
mhm,
this.
yeah,
I don't know. But
yeah.
the jazz part, I was like,
It's
all
fun.
right,
And
pop
then
off.
we see Tony Stark show up, and say like one line, and he's arrested. Um, and then we had the whole healing process. I do want to talk about the scene where he goes to May and lies about falling off of a skateboard. I'll say this as someone who's lived in New York for a while now, almost 10 years now. No, more than 10 years now. You say you've slipped and fell down the subway
Congrats.
stairs. I mean, that's because it happens to the best of us. Um,
But he's such a bad liar.
no, I know he's the worst liar in the world.
He's like, yeah, Norman Osborn just called and asked if he wants to change the name of the company
Yeah.
to Osmart. What in the world, buddy?
Yeah, I think that he's a very bad liar, and I think he thinks that people not following up means that they believe him when it just means that like they're more concerned about it because it's like this is such an obvious lie. Why is he lying so often? Um, like
Buddy.
and so he's had this shitty situation. And he's trying to heal up, and he's very worried because Norman gives him a little speech about how like he needs to be tougher. He needs to, if he's going to be Spider Man, he needs to be more on it, and he has doubts about that. Understandably, he's 15 years old.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that also are you working towards when Osborn when he says
Yes, but no, you
the
can take it. You can take it. And I'm not trying to.
oh man, I was like, I got chills
Hmm.
when he said that because I was like, are they gonna have Norman Osborn do the with great power
Hmm.
comes great responsibility?
Hmm.
But then he said comes great respect, and I was like, holy shit! I don't know why I found that so harrowing,
Yeah,
and it felt like honestly, it would be a good concept for like a what if
yeah,
episode. Like, what if that was kind of I think that's what
yeah.
made me nervous. Is I was like does changing it from responsibility to respect fundamentally change Peter's
Well, because the
character?
thing
And
about
it
it,
won't
the
here, but
thing about it is that it's a fun is the fundamental difference between those two them as people is that
mhm,
Spider-Man that Peter considers his power a thing that like that changes him internally, and Norman thinks about power in terms of how it affects the way other people treat him, right? That like
mhm,
if you
mhm.
see if the main thing when you think about power, you think about how other people perceive you, that is very corrupting,
Yes.
and I think that that is a very interesting like you can now see shades of how Norman Osborn can become a villain, even though he's been a pretty decent guy to Peter this whole time. It's like, right, like if the thing that's important to him is respect and that's why he wants power, then like that actually just that is an unfillable hole, and so you'll keep
Mhm,
going after it, even though respect is a good like I think the thing that makes it so interesting too is it's not an inherently sinister line because he's talking about respect's important, but it's like
mhm.
if power if what you need in order to get respect is power, then you're
Mhm.
fucked. Like it's like you could say kindness brings you respect, or fairness brings you respect, but power, then ugh, that's scary.
Well, oh, yeah, and it's so interesting because it kind of changes even the, like changing that one word almost changes the, like, grammatical structure of that
Yeah.
sentence because it's like power plus respect instead
Mm.
of power requiring
Exactly.
like, you to respond in a certain
Yeah.
way. It's like respect is something that you are given alongside
Mhm.
power, not something you have to earn,
Yeah.
but responsibility is something you have to, like
Yeah.
I
And
don't know, it was so
yeah, and
fascinating to
clearly
me.
Peter's not. It's not that he's not interested in respect, but he doesn't value it as much as he does the responsibility to other people, and that's the rubber's gonna have to meet the road at some point with that because they are incompatible at a certain point. There are points you have to make a decision of whether do you want to do the responsible thing or do you want to do the thing that makes people like respect you. And
But and again, because he has a secret identity, he
yeah,
can't really demand
no,
respect.
he
Like,
can't.
and so, and what does hit him deep
Mm,
down, because I think I noted this. He said this in multiple episodes.
mm,
This go around
mm,
where he was like, "I'm just trying to do the right thing," and
mm,
so that is, I do think, still so central to the character, which is why having Norman deliver this
mm,
version of this line,
mm,
and seeing Peter respond kind of like,
mm.
weird was this super I don't know, it was like uncanny
And
valley or something.
And
It was
I think the point
so
you just made is a great point and a rebuttal I always make because so many people are like, man, if a character's like all morally good, they're not interesting. Characters need to be complicated. And it's like, no, characters that are striving to be morally good and do the right thing can be extremely interesting because what the right
Mhm.
thing is not like it's set in stone. Like it is as changing as any other type of motivation. And like the thing that's interesting
Yeah.
about Peter is that like because he's not all powerful, because he's not Superman, he can only do so many right things. And the struggle of figuring out what right things to do, what right thing, like how much is doing the right thing in his relationship with Nico compared to doing the right thing for people who are in a burning building, like that weighing
Mhm.
that is as interesting as a moral gray area, yada yada. But let's talk about his
Yes.
relationship with Nico, because that's so much what he's worried about. And
Oh,
she's
yeah.
offended. And I think she's on the one hand, I'm like, he did this to protect you, duh. But also, it's like, I mean, the thing I think is I like is that I think that she would be, and this is kind of obvious, but she would be reacting very differently if he just didn't tell anyone. But the fact that Harry knew is really a betrayal.
Yes, and the fact that Harry knew and she doesn't totally know why
Mm,
Harry knew,
yeah.
because Harry knows by accident
Hmm.
too, and so she can't know the reasons why he knows. So and yeah, I think though what they made really interesting, because for a minute there I was like, "Girl, get over it,"
Hmm.
but then having her tapping into the "He'll abandon me like everybody else
Hmm.
does," because he
Hmm.
already has.
Hmm.
That I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I feel sympathetic for you
Yeah.
again. You get to be mad a little longer.
And because the thing I think that like because we're on Spider-Man's side, we kind of neglect. And I remember thinking this when we rewatched all the Spider-Man movies at the beginning on the Patreon. So if you want to listen to those reviews, go back to our Patreon, the first episodes we did. I think the thing I remember thinking in Spider-Man 2 is like, all right, like being friends or boyfriend girlfriend with Peter Parker is shitty. Like he actually is not a good boyfriend or a friend. And in a
Mhm.
lot of ways it might not be worth it. Like even without you being in danger, like he's always bailing on you. He's
Yeah, he's
always like
flaky.
and it's like it is actually shitty. And so I think the fact that like he was already distant and now on top of that he was lying, like ugh, being a shitty friend.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was it's Peter trying to do everything
Mhm,
Parker that I have noticed, like, that seems to be there's a lot of character beats that they're obviously hitting with him,
mhm,
but that is one that I feel like they're hitting really hard right now,
mhm.
perhaps because it didn't land as much with MCU Spider-Man for obvious
Correct.
reasons. He's
Yeah.
kind of, like, thrown outside of his normal
Mhm.
situation.
Yes.
But it also makes me it again kinda underscores how young he is. I'm like, "You really do think that you can do
Yeah.
it all," and I think that that's what we see, like, at the end of No Way Home, is when he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, no, I can't," and that's,
Yeah.
like that's a big moment of
Yeah.
maturity
Yeah.
for him, but right now he's just
Yeah. And he
he's a
doesn't have the
Twilight.
he doesn't have the wisdom to know that it requires forethought. Like, you can't, if you're
Mhm.
going to balance, if you're going to try to balance as much as you can, you need to think about it beforehand. You can't just do whatever comes up next because you'll eventually mess things up. Um,
Yes.
and then so how do we end this? How do we end this off? Where the Spider-Man suit's broken. Norman is in the wind. He's not in the wind. He's doing something. We don't know what. Probably something nefarious. To be honest, there's 2 episodes left. But what do we get the reveal of?
We get the actual Spider-Man
Mm,
costume,
mhm,
which I will admit too, perhaps because the way that they've done this
mm,
character in this
mm.
show, it I had forgotten that he wasn't wearing the classic
Yeah,
like
yeah,
red and blue
mhm,
suit until they showed it there at the end, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah.
now we're getting
Because
it." And so to
I
have
think the white one is good. I think it's not, obviously, it's not iconic, but it's not actually a shitty suit at all.
it's not a shitty suit at all, and it like sort of still kind of works as a similar
Yeah.
color pattern or whatever, but um the character
Mhm,
himself is able to be so iconic even without the literal
mhm,
Spider-Man icon.
mhm,
Um, so it actually, because I'd kind of forgotten that,
mhm,
when you see that reflection at the end, and obviously we all love like a reflection moment because of all
mhm,
the different ways you can understand it.
mhm.
Um, I got really excited, and
Yeah.
that was when it cut off and the kids
Mhm.
went, "Oh come
Yeah,
on!"
it's very exciting. And so what are you looking forward to in the last 2 episodes? Like, what do you hope to see? And like what excites you about, what's the exciting possibilities that you can imagine in the last 2 episodes?
In the last 2 episodes,
So what I would say, if you need to think, I would say
yeah,
I
you go
want to
ahead.
see. I think because they already know we're gonna do more seasons, I don't expect them to have like a full on, like I want the reveal of what's going on with Norman, how far gone is he actually, what's he up to, um, and I want to have that moment where Peter has to consider what he's bought into. I want to
Mhm.
see, Tombstone really cross a line he can't come back from. Um, and I want to see, like, and I want to know what the deal with Norman and Doc Ock is. Those are the things I want to see. There's other stuff, obviously, I'd be happy to see, but those are things I'm tracking that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I wanna figure out more on Doc Ock for sure. I think, I am really invested in Tombstone's character because there's also going to be, like, there should be a big physical change with that character, and so I am interested to see what, I don't know, explosion or gamma something or other is gonna do that. Um, and I am hoping that we actually find out we get more on Nico because we did start getting little pokes this these episodes about her powers and stuff. And I know her from like the Midnight Suns video games. So she's in that kind of witchy paranormal world or supernatural world. So I hope that we get a little bit of that teased for sure. You're muted.
See, I'm such a good producer. Don't remember when I'm muted. That I think that that's a good point because she's I think she's done really well as like a friend character, but I think that like at a certain point you want to have more utility from her. You don't want her to just be like the Peter, Peter, come on.
Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good point. And yeah, man, I just want to see. I just want to see the Norman stuff. I want to see the rubber hit the road because like this show's got a lot of great voice talent in it, but there's only one
Mhm.
Coleman Domingo, and
There is only one Coleman
and let's just say,
Domingo.
I mean, was asked if he would play Norman Osborn in a live action MCU, and he said yes. And I just am confused about like why, like, is that what? Why is that not in writing? I just don't understand. I don't.
How do you get that notarized
Yeah,
and
it's like,
put
yeah,
into
yeah, I think he's now like the only sixth actor ever to get Best Actor nominations 2 straight years, and he wants to be in the MCU. So
I mean, now's the time before he realizes
yeah,
maybe not.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is the peak you're gonna get it in. I don't think it's gonna be much easier to get talent. But no, I think that he's been really great, and I want to see him play the other
Mhm.
side because that's why you cast him because he can play extremely
Yeah.
sensitive people. Like I've seen him play tragically sensitive characters, and I've also seen him play fucking diabolical people. And
Yeah.
so the fact he can do both, I mean, that's what I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and he can do it. I don't know. He's like left little breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Even outside of the fact that we already know,
Uh-huh.
he is so good at kind of like towing that line, and to the point where I'm kind of like, Peter,
Yeah.
buddy,
Yeah.
have you never heard a menacing voice before?
Yeah, exactly.
But
The thing is he doesn't know. Unfortunately, he doesn't.
he like teases, he'll kind of get intense, and then he
Mhm.
does the whole, oh, it's okay, but like you slough
Exactly.
it off as a
Like, yeah,
joke
he's
situation.
aware of his, like, he knows what he's capable of, and he's kind of managing it. But at some point, he
Hmm.
loses the ability to manage it, and that's what I'm interested in. And I'm interested to see how that affects Harry. Now, obviously, I don't want them to rush into
Yeah.
it. I think that if you're doing a show that's going to be multiple seasons, the great thing about the Osborns is that you have two villains, and you can do one and then do another. um,
Yeah.
but
Ugh.
yeah,
Hey, yeah, Harry is also, I think one thing that I was also thinking about watching these episodes is every character is kind of like, they're all kind of tragic, even
yeah,
though it's this well-known, like,
yeah,
kids love
yeah.
Spider-Man, and it's kind of this like generally
Mm-hmm.
happy,
Mm-hmm.
upbeat tone, but every single character is deeply tragic. There was that one moment, and like, I when when Harry's like, "Peter, your mom is awesome." And Peter goes, "That's not my mom." And
Yeah.
Harry's like, "Yeah, my mom's not here too."
Mm-hmm.
And then Peter's like, "Nico lives at a foster home.
Yeah.
So, hey, that means all of us are, you know." And I was like, I don't know why. I laughed so hard. I was like,
Yeah.
this is really not a great joke, buddy.
It's
But
like
you
Peter.
are
I'm
noticing
sure
the thing.
you read the word trauma bonding somewhere, but that's not what that means.
Yes. Well, and Nico goes, "That's not an icebreaker, my guy."
No. It's like, I yeah, my mom's dead, your mom's gone, let's all be friends. That's not no.
I did though, but because like in superhero
Mm,
everything,
mm,
like everyone's parents are
yeah.
dead and they all, like, a lot of people have tragic
Yeah.
lives, having someone be like, "Hey, this is something we could be like the Dead
Yeah.
Moms Club or
Of
something,"
course.
is kind
Yeah.
of funny.
No, and I think that that's a good point, and I think that it is. I mean, people gripe about that, like, why does everyone have to have dead moms? And because it's easy storytelling to make them more sympathetic, and it just, and because we do think in society, we think we live in a culture that considers suffering valuable in a lot of ways, for better and worse. So, like, that's why. But I think that calling it out, but making it through Peter, like, trying to be good fun. I believe that he would do that. Like, it doesn't feel far fetched. It doesn't feel like he's like
Yeah.
being meta. It feels like he is trying to, like. Okay, he's like, okay,
Right.
what do they have in common? What do they have in common? What do they have in common?
It does, it does. It's so funny. And that's like, I said this the last time I was on. The show is self-referential. Like
Mm,
we do get
yeah.
a bunch of kind of
Mm.
nods to things without feeling like I said, Ryan Reynoldsy.
Yes,
Like we're just not
there's
like,
no
good job.
that just happened moments.
Yeah, but yes, but it's kind of like a, oh wait, yeah, and then you
Yeah.
kind of move
Yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
that,
I'm really I'm liking the show way more than I thought I would. I know we talked about this in the first episode. I had very low expectations. And
me
it's
too.
just like it's a fun ride. It's the writing is strong, and like
Mhm.
it just has such a firm grip on the characters, and that is all you need, especially in something like this where it's animation. Where, like, obviously not that animation. I don't want any of the animation people to come after me, but I think you can focus so much more on the story and on the characters when you don't have to worry about all the other elements. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is, I know you guys have talked about this all the time
Mhm.
on the podcast, but because so many of the like short mini series, they are kind
Yeah.
of all just appendages of this larger storytelling, and having a very character focused piece is really refreshing. And
Yeah.
also, honestly, that is what people
Mm.
usually actually are buying into,
Yes.
is
Because
characters.
it's not the thing about it is, which this is a thing that's hard, I think, for people to understand, is like so much shit is happening. This more shit is happening this than almost any MCU Disney Plus series, but it's less
Uh-huh.
plotty because that's not what you're tracking. Like, the problem
Yeah.
always is in these, like, if you actually want a more character driven story, you actually want more things to happen because the thing you're tracking is the character's growth. If the thing you're tracking is the
Right.
literal of what's happening, then it's not character focused. And so I think that that's what's
Yeah.
great about this.
Yeah, because it's very situational. You're like, if we put them in this
Yeah,
situation, if we put Nico and Harry alone together, what
exactly.
happens? Like, it's all of that going on. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's way easier to buy into.
Yeah. And so, Cecilia, any final thoughts before we bid the audience adieu?
Um,
It's always the answer to that question always can be no.
okay, so I think I shared all of my summarized thoughts,
Hmm.
but I am my current thoughts are I'm excited to go into, the act 3 here, the
Hmm.
finale. Um and I have enjoyed being pleasantly surprised by
Hmm.
this show. I was obviously going to always
Yeah.
probably like it and watch it because it's Spider-Man and it's Marvel, but it's been a lot more thought-provoking
Hmm.
and sophisticated in
Hmm.
some ways while still also childlike in other, and not
Yeah.
that childlike and sophisticated are
No, no, but
necessarily
we don't need to.
separate.
We don't need to. We don't do this anymore. It's 2025. We're off that discourse. People are being obtuse if they don't know what you mean.
I know. I don't know. I just don't want my kids to
No,
think that I think those are dumb.
it's childlike, but it's not like immature. Like that's the thing. It has
Right.
childlike qualities, but it's sophistication of storytelling. Like that's I think that there's nothing wrong with something being childlike, unless all you consume is
Yeah.
media for children. Then you'll feel insecure about it.
Yeah, I think just like that one moment where he did break down
Yeah.
with his Aunt May.
Hmm.
I was like, this is really powerful, and like having Henry see that, and Henry's
Yeah.
kind of like getting to the age where having emotions is like kind of
Hmm.
not cool.
Hmm.
That does matter to
Yeah.
me. And then also just for me as an adult, I also get kind of softened. I'm like, this is his whole moment for this
Yeah.
character, and like
Yeah.
he's growing up and stuff. So it can hit, the same moment can hit, but in different
Hmm.
ways. And I'm I'm really impressed by how sophisticated I think the whole show has been.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Cecilia, where can people find you on the internet on various platforms?
On the internet, I am on Instagram and I am on TikTok. Um, I'm
Mm.
not going to do my ads. You can Google me. Cecilia is Cecelia, and there's so few people.
It's gonna be in the description. I got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And you can
across
follow me at the J
places.
Christie on Twitter, at the J Christie on TikTok, at J Christie on Blue Sky. I'm doing my live stream fundraiser on the 22nd to raise money for the Trevor Project. I can be having a lot of
Hmm.
guests come through, doing giveaway donations. So if you donate before the stream, you're entered into giveaways. So I encourage you to, if you're going to donate before the 22nd, so you can win things like signed copies of tweets. I'm actually just about to send out the first one today. So that's very exciting.
So dope.
Yes. And please make sure, like I said, to join the Patreon, patreon.com/MCVersityPod. It's only $3 if you get everything we've ever recorded. We've recorded so much. It's only
So
for
much.
$3. And you get in the Discord for $3 as well. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/MCVersityPod. Or you can check us out on any podcast platform. I'm not partial to either. I mean, YouTube is easier to monetize, but no one's counting. Anyway,
You are
but
counting.
no, I'm not. But anyway, for Cecelia Alfonso-Stokes, I've been
Word.
Jay Christie. Have a good one.